Okay. The Visiting Artist Program, funded by PAFA's graduate program, brings an outstanding roster of local, national, and international artists to PAFA each semester for lectures, critiques, and workshops. The program exposes students and the public to a range of artistic approaches and fosters discussion about contemporary art and ideas. This afternoon, we are pleased to have Duy joining us. Duy Hoàng is an interdisciplinary artist born in Vietnam in 1989 and is currently residing in New York City. He received a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Massachusetts Lowell in 2013 and a Master of Fine Arts from Columbia University in 2017. Hoàng has exhibited across the US and internationally over the years. A few prominent ones are Festival Images Vevey in Switzerland, Museum of Contemporary Art, Vojvodina, Serbia, South Dakota State University, Klein Humboldt Gallery in Berlin, ICA Singapore, Thomas Urban Gallery in New York, Lober Family Gallery in Israel, the Royal Geographical Society Pavilion, London, and Cahoon Museum of American Art, Massachusetts. Some of his notable residencies include Labec, Switzerland, Rabbit Island in Michigan, Mass MoCA in Massachusetts, ISCP in New York, Marsupe Artist Residency and Studio, Japan, Mildred's Lane in Pennsylvania, Fountainhead in Miami, Wave Hills, New York Community Trust Van Lier Fellowship, amongst others. Through his practice, Duy Hoàng accumulates natural materials and found objects and responds to them through multiple mediums such as drawing, printmaking, photography, scientific processes, and more. It results in site-responsive works that investigate the desire for attentiveness in our immediate surroundings, making connections to the greater environment, and becoming more aware of our place. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Duy, and you can begin sharing your screen. Duy, I think you're still muted.
I am muted. Here we go. Can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yes, can hear now.
Good. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time meeting some of the students today and talk about their work, and it's feeling really good to be in conversation with the folks there. And yeah, so I hope that this artist lecture, we can treat it as a conversation of sorts. So feel free to jump in whenever, if you have questions that that you want to ask. Feel free to cut me off and ask the questions. And with the with the talk that I'm giving here at PAFA. In the notion of learning, I would love to share some images from my master program as well as a start, and kind of go through them sort of chronologically, so you can see the progression of how the work kind of come about, and not so much of jumping around. And what you're looking at right now in this image is actually my studio at Columbia when I was doing my master program. This is right before, or actually this was the whole year leading up to my thesis. And my work was kind of accumulated over the year, and while I was generating what I was going to do for thesis, and during that time the space kind of come about, and it has a lot of different projects. I have a lot of different ideas and things that I was trying out, but ultimately it become a space where I kind of take over as a shelter. Let's see. And that resulted in this is my thesis show. And for this piece, I was making a full-scale installations in this little nook area where I set up 3 different level of shelters with the tarps, and you can walk into it, and underneath you find this wooden structures that are becomes a display of Vietnamese herbs and vegetable. And how I came to this was just during the time where my grandmother's health was degrading, and she was able to function normally at the time, but the things that was most noticeable about her health kind of on the downward spiral was her garden, and how she couldn't take care of the garden anymore. So every time before when I come home, it would be lush full of food and vegetables that we would consume ourselves. She was the caretaker of the garden as well as the caretaker of us, the family. But later on, the garden becomes very bare and nothing was growing. So that was the most striking aspect, the most striking change that I could notice and was quite fixate over. So I started to collect her Vietnamese herbs and vegetables that she was growing and press them into these specimen slides. So the structure kind of housed them as a library of sort. So the viewers can come into the space, and sort of handle the specimen, kind of look at them, and they can also use the structure. I built in the structure a lens on the table that they can slide these specimens in and out as an observable microscope table, basically. And anyone with a smartphone, a camera phone, can match up the lens and can take a macro image of the specimen. So at the beginning of the exhibition, everything was really green, everything was alive, and every day it changes and it becomes moldy, it becomes brown. So it's kind of it becomes like a time-based performance of sorts, where the installation itself changes every day, and you don't really notice the change unless you visit it multiple times and kind of spend time with it. It's a very slow process. And I kind of want to show that the decay process is happening, but it's at such a different rate than our human scale, that the moment that we have with these materials are kind of just a moment in time, and you have to stick with it to kind of appreciate the process and see the changes over time. So that's one interactive aspect of this installation. The other aspect of it is when you sit on this bench to observe the specimen, on the side is also a live feed video that of a GoPro that was pointing straight at you. And what you can do is you can unhook this loop, this rope, this paracord, and sort of pull onto this rig, and the camera will rise and low as you interact with it, and you can see the live feed video kind of move up and down these 3 tiers of, of shelters. And on top of each shelters is a garden bed with the specimens from the garden of my grandmother as well. So you can see that the camera move up and down to view it. And then moving on to a little bit later on, this is an installation that was done in Hokkaido, Japan. I was there for a few weeks, and this project kind of come about. And my work tend to sort of come from a space where I think a lot about the idea of home. And as an immigrant myself, moving to the U.S. at an early age, the transition was quite jarring and kind of overwhelming. So the only way for me to sort of figure out the new space, the foreign site, is to kind of break it down to the minute, the little things within it, kind of like a scientific process where you break down to the details and kind of understand it, and then kind of build it back up into an environment where in this case, a habitat where I can surround myself in with the materials that I'm observing or trying to understand. So surrounding myself with backup in this foreign world. And what happened here is when I was spending time there was a type of sedum weed that had this really distinct pinkish color. I think I'm trying to, let me see if I can have a few photos. So, so like on the bottom corner, bottom right corner, you can see the sedum weed sort of had this pinkish striking color, and that's come from the chemical that the weed removing chemical that the local folks were putting into the ground. So it kind of shifts the natural environment around them while trying to get rid of this, and it becomes it gives the landscape a different tone, a different um, color. What was interesting to me was right in front of this room as well, which I occupy as a studio at the time, and it becomes an exhibition space here, is a Japanese garden in itself, and thinking about the idea of garden and thinking about the idea of curation and what real wild is and what real nature is. I was thinking about this materials that basically every day I was weeding the garden, weeding the Japanese garden, and kind of come back with this materials that is changing and shifting to the people. Interaction was quite intriguing, and so I brought the materials back, accumulated over time, over the weeks that I was there, and make observational processes with them, like drawing, printing, photographing, um, any kind of responses that I would that I have access to, or have any kind of materials that I can on hand that I can do it right then and there. I would do it. So that's one of the process shot of myself occupying the space. So it becomes a habitat, a working space, a living space. And my work tend to have to exist in the space, where it's very airy, very full of light. I have a close relationship to the idea of a solarium, a nursery of sorts, where a space where it's trying to grow and try to nurture and try to revitalize something, where the materials within it is decaying, like is on its way out, and the life is very fleeting. So I really work a lot with that contradiction, with that kind of harmonious existence of sorts. And then at the end of my time there, the natural material go back into the ground to become soil again, to compost. And the things that I used to do with these large installations is I would make a capsule for each one of these. And specifically for this space in Japan, the households there tend to have a designated box that carries the dishes and bowls and dishes um, that kind of correlate to the size of the family. So in this house, I was I was able to use the left behind box that was left there and kind of and fill it with the essence of the piece. So I built in these shelves and create this memorabilia. So in this case, it's a capsule of the time that is spent there. So just an element within the overall work. And then this work was done in Switzerland, and it was next to the Geneva, to Lake Geneva. And my practice tend to be outdoor a lot. I take walks. I try to be trying to learn about the site, trying to see the wildlife there, the things that are that I things that I can find there. Basically, when I collect material, they're usually discarded materials. So in this case, every day I take walks and collect things that trash and debris that were washed up to shore on next to the lake, and kind of bring them back to this kind of laboratory setting where I take a closer look at the materials that was washed up there. And so I come across a lot of dead insects and view them under microscopes, and also binoculars as well. So I generated a lot of photographs from this project. So thinking a lot about the micro and macro of the work there, where I constantly, picking up things and come across a lot of encounters with live materials that are discarded and fall off the trees, feathers, and a lot of that, while in the background of the site, there was site like this, the Alps. And so I was thinking a lot about this, the distance and connection and disconnection between the scales of things. So I took a lot of these photographs and also displayed them around the installations as well. This is an image, a microscopic image of algae from the lake. And this is also another capsule that I was making there, where using only discarded materials, thinking a lot about the trash that was washed up, and found this foam that is fitting for technological objects, and then kind of fill these cavities with the materials that I collected there, sort of like a capsule. A moment in time of that space. And outside of that that space is also I was trying out this sculptural work. This is a version of it where this is an insect trap, and this is a scientific process where entomologists would go into the field and light up, bring a bed sheet with them and use UV light or whatever light they can get, and illuminate the the object, and it would attract insects and bugs from the surrounding environment. And I was doing this project here to see the species that were occupying the space, but it also works as a sculpture. And then moving on to this work. Again, feel free to chime in with question. I don't see anyone, so I'm just gonna keep talking. But yeah, feel free to chime in whenever. But this project comes right after that that work, and what this is a series of photographs that generated from Google Translate. So it actually begins in Japan when I was trying to use Google Translate to read a book that was in Japanese, and accidentally kind of hover over an image of grass on the same on the next page, and it started to generate, or it started to decipher mistakenly the grass, the natural material, as Japanese calligraphies and text. So it translates on the spot, on in real time, on top of the image, what the word that it thinks that it sees. So I took that idea outside into the gardens and surrounding area, and continue on with this project for a couple of years, and generated these images where it does exactly that same notion of translating nature, and also I can set it to Chinese language as well, and that was a direct relationship with where I'm from, Vietnam, and the relationship with China, and the language, the text, the writing, the words, the me as a descendant of sort, me as an immigrant, and trying to understand the site. For example, this piece was done in Switzerland, and trying to understand the words there, or me coming to the US when I was young and trying to learn the language. And again, back to the idea of the foreign site, and how to kind of translate it. How do I understand this new environment? And so this is in a way a direct reference to that, of how do I translate this environment that I'm unfamiliar with. At the same time, at the same time that I see it as AI and technology as an extension of our senses. We're trying to reach to trying to understand nature and trying to understand the world around us. At the same time, I also see this in a more, I guess, abstract and poetic way, that I see nature trying to desperately giving us hints and trying to communicate with us in some way. So there's a lot of random words and text that come out of these photographs, but at the same time, a lot of them are very punctual and very political and very, I guess, very direct. So you can see here some of them live solitary, roar, dead, meaning penalty. So a lot of random, but in a way it becomes quite a poetic gesture. I'm gonna try to move faster, if you don't mind, because I think I got overexcited and have a lot of images. But I think it's worthwhile to see a lot and see more than me rambling. But this is a recent project that was from I believe last summer in Florida, where I, again, spending a lot of time in the space there, in a new environment, in a new climate, in a new surrounding, and trying to understand what the wildlife there is like, trying to see what the experience there is like, and the materials, and start to collect you know the things that I come across. And also in this case, I do a lot of collaging as well. So very much the same way I did the other installation, where things are kind of flat on the surface, very three-dimensional and sculptural, freestanding of sort on tables. In this case, I start to flip that onto the wall and kind of treat it more literal as a collage, and kind of mixing and matching things together. And with 2D and 3D as well. So these images were taken as I live and kind of do my research there, and start to cut them out and kind of have them at play with the actual specimens that were collected there. So it becomes like a laboratory, a field station of sorts, where I kind of try my best to sort of put my observational skills to work, and then bring all the materials back to the same environment and kind of create an ecosystem in itself. And that's all the installations that I've done sort of become to me. They become its own. Over time, I really enjoy works that making work that I can really predict how they're gonna look, how they're gonna form. Because in a way, I really trust the work trying to tell me something different, rather than I try to predetermine what the work's gonna look like. So in this way, in this mode of working, I kind of see myself only as a pair of hands that kind of putting things together, rather than trying to physically shaping the actual work into whatever form. all of this is very responsive in the nature of collage, and maybe that's why I really enjoy the idea of collaging. So the physical object itself becomes an element that is put together. And so this was also done right after that piece, and again with thinking a lot about home and moving and temporary aspect of things that we think are permanent, and that's where that's why my work has always had this scientific kind of aspect to it, where it's all about observations, but also natural history, where we always desperately trying to prolong life. Going back to my grandmother and other projects that have my family's passing. That was a starting point for a lot of the older project. I think a lot about the idea of fleeting lives and the short time span that we have with materials, and how can we be with the things around us that is more important. That time of being with things and observing and learning things is more important than the preservations of things and prolonging something, and that's where the natural history kind of display interest kind of go back to into the work. And so this is an archive of all the specimens that I come across during my time there, all from just sweeping the floor, and it was an open space, and we were in the sort of like a swampy area, so there was just a lot of life that come in through the space, and just by observing and kind of unveiling things, you can come out with a lot of interactions, encounters with these materials, and it become a wall piece. And then this is also another project that in continuation of that last project, where I start to kind of use the wall as part of my installation, as a primary surface for my installations. And this piece revolve around three specific plants. One is a Japanese knotweed, the other is sugar maple, and the last one is I forgot already. But basically, thinking a lot about local species and native species, and the last one is American burnweed, where I was thinking a lot about how the site was very much open. It's a glass space where the first thing that I see out of the site, the space, is a sugar maple, where the plant is native to this environment. And I came across a lot of Japanese knotweed, where it was an invasive species to this was in the Northeast, in Boston, Massachusetts, and the burnweed is native to this country, but was a invasive to East Asia. So kind of thinking about this migration of materials and what we consider to be local, and what we consider to be native, what we consider to be invasive, what we consider to be harmful. And kind of thinking about my grandmother's garden as well. Wherever she traveled to, she would have, she would re-accomplish a garden where she carries her food and culture and history with her. And I kind of consider ourselves immigrants as, in a way, in a strange way, an invasive species, a species that is trying to thrive in a foreign space, and hopefully succeeding, and but being successful can have the notion of harmful and invasive. Um, so these are some details of. So all of this material is also collected and um, responds to over the month that I spent there. These are animal tracks um, that were found in the area around. So a lot of these installations are trial and error, and I love the idea that the work is very um, it has the notion of in progress. I want the idea that some very much like a laboratories in a way, that's very much like someone is still working on this. The piece will, you know, live and continue to grow and change forever. It has, you know, a work in progress sort of feel to it, where things are uh, very crude, but together they have a power of interspecies connections, or you know, kind of questions um, kind of left us with, well, at least I hope, leave the viewers with more questions than what they came in with, and hopefully they can, you know, ask very simple but very profound questions of you know, sort of re-observing, re-examining the space that the environment that they've been living in, kind of paying more attention to the details around us, and also what is our place within it. You know, like where do we belong within it? How can we be in interaction with these materials in everyday life? Um, that maybe now we can start to see those connections a bit more. You know, the intangibles, seeing the intangibles a bit more, like these connecting lines. And maybe next time we, by learning these connections, hopefully the next time we can be a bit more mindful of the space that we're occupying. And all of these, the specimens that were collected, these 3 plants that the work was evolved around. So there were materials that I also kind of salvaged there, like these 3 plexi pieces, large plexi glass pieces, and so these become an herbarium, a flower press, and they also change over time because of the moisture releasing from the plant. And then this was last fall at South Dakota State University, and very much the same way with the other works as well, but in South Dakota, of course. And I was playing with the lighting here, and hopefully continue this work in the future as well, where I can have the light kind of rigged so that it can dim and turn back on full like this, and then dim back out to. So I was thinking a lot about day and night, and the kind of works that I was making there, and I was doing a lot of uh, camera trap, or like field cameras, where I would set up cameras at night, and animals would come out. And so there's a video aspect to this installations. So again, these plant specimens were collected there, and I was thinking a lot about the beetle boards, the beetle holes that were evidence on these plants, and the layering of the environment that was happening there. So there's a whole display that based on that idea, and literally the interconnection, the lines that I want to kind of point out. This was and this was done in Florida, back in Florida, uh, and this is quite new. and I was kind of got interested in the plant materials there and the water that we were surrounding by. I was thinking a lot about you know uh, the water that we are surrounded by, us as an island, and these images, these water images are another work that I kind of incorporated here. Um, that I've been collecting about 10-second videos of water from everywhere I travel to. So a lot of these are, in Asia and um, Switzerland and across the US. And so I just been collecting and kind of adding to the archive. A lot of my work, aside from the physical object, the physical sculpture or installations or whatever form that they take, um, a big part of my work is have been archiving, just folders and folders of um, you know similar ideas and images and videos and just a digital archive of the encounters that I've come across. This work was also done around the same time, where this is a strawberry terracotta pie, and I've been thinking a lot. This actually have been generated since the thesis project years ago, where I used planter IDs, and I was thinking about the micro and macro again with that idea as well, where I was thinking about planted ideas and the idea about when you walk away with a plan and you have these notes of like how to take care of the plan, and basically my work kind of around this idea of contradicting idea of the potential growth versus the inevitability of decay, basically. So I wrote my family's name on there, my immediate family's name on the planted IDs, and sticking it to the ground. And to me, they change the scale of the work, and to me, they become tombstones when you kind of zoom yourself in, when you kind of lower yourself to this position of reading the materials. And the three on top are my father and my grandparents who passed. They all passed away in the last 10 years. And behind uh, the information behind their name and the days that that they move each time, when they were born, and then they move from the Vietnam to the US to other places as they migrate. And behind that information is Vietnamese herbs and vegetable and how to take care of those materials. Okay, we're coming to close to an end here. I hope you guys are bearing with me. So this work also done relatively at the same time, where I I was working with the idea. I was working with the scientific approach of water transpiration. So in biology, in botany, there's a there's a process called water transpiration where you can by it's very much used as a children experiment for education, for people to see the water that plants are releasing into the atmosphere or into our surrounding, basically. So here I have a photo of it. So you basically trap the moisture. Plants are constantly releasing moisture, but in this case, you can trap the moisture that release, and over time, it will condense into physical droplets. And I've collected these over time, and I use the water to make the watercolor that accompanies these herbarium as well. So the plants that were collected from also press into this herbarium, accompanied by the water that perhaps processed through the entire plant and then generate into a watercolor of the process of water transpiration that I created. And I think this is the last project or two in the series. And so again, with, impermanent home, survival shelters, survival skills, I've been interested in a lot of these ideas, and these are very new works that I will be continue as a series. These are small scale wall relief of these shelter shapes. So this is an A-frame, and this is a sea fly wedge shape that is on the wall. So yeah, they're basically wall relief sculpture of these survival shelters. And I think that is it. So, and I can turn over to you guys and answer any questions if you want. I'll go back to any images.
Thank you so much, Dee. What an amazing presentation. Yeah, so we can do questions now. I'll give everyone just a second to type out any questions they might have in the chat. And I can field those for you guys. In the meantime, I do have one question for you though, Dee. Throughout all of the years, it seems like you've had so many different processes and materials that you've worked with. Have you found that you have a favorite process or even a favorite specimen to work with?
I haven't. I tend to every installation seems to kind of overwhelm with a lot of materials and specimen, but I think each one of them, maybe I don't really share it a lot until someone really asks me like you do now, but I think a lot of them kind of I do the collecting or gathering anyways, but within that process, one or two things usually kind of stand out and kind of drive forward. So the biggest one would be shepherd's purse. This wheat plants that I believe I think I read somewhere that it's the second most common wheat in the world, possibly, yeah, I think it's second. But I didn't realize that until years later, after I collected it, that it just kind of a recurring plant materials that I keep seeing and I keep noticing and I keep gathering and work with. So it first started in undergrad, when I first come across it and then learn about it and then realize what it was, and then it keep coming back. And it showed up in Japan as well, in the Japan work, in a very dry and dead appearance, but it's still it. And and I think it kind of relate to that point of me traveling and me moving and my family moving, and how do we sort of adapt ourselves to a new environment while staying the same and trying to do the same thing, trying to thrive the same way before or be connected to the same sort of culture and history. And I'm kind of I feel related to that. Maybe that's where wheat and wild plants and weeds are what I was kind of attracted to. But also they're very neglected, and we want to kill them. We're trying to get rid of. Everyone does, and and I feel like I kind of felt bad for it. I think when I realized what I was collecting, I was kind of feel bad, and okay, why am I feeling bad? Oh, maybe maybe I put myself in the shoes of
Yeah.
of these things that people want to get rid of. um, yeah.
Thank you so much. So thoughtful. So, our next question, when configuring your installations, do you start with the space or the objects within the space?
Um, I had this conversation with someone earlier about where do you start, and I think early on, I think I was trying to make. I think I was taught to be very process driven, um, and not so much conceptual. Well, there were two thoughts of it. I had two professors. One is very conceptual, and one is very process driven. And I think I always kind of like in between all of them. But a lot of the time when I was younger, I just keep making and didn't really know what I was making. So over time, I kind of trust that process that if I make enough and if I continue to make, and hopefully the work itself will tell me what it means. So now I think the space tend to I tend to come across this space, whether it's given to me generously, for a month or a couple of weeks to work on something for an exhibition or a residency. So I kind of tend to stumble upon these spaces and kind of work what kind of responds to that spaces. But at the same time, I mean, there's a few occasions that I was really attracted to a space, and a lot of these spaces are very open and very airy and very solarium-like, um, very greenhouse-like, and that's I kind of find the commonality in a lot of these spaces. But a lot of the time, I tend to work outside a lot. I'm not quite a studio person. Like I'm outside and then I bring the materials back into the studio, and then the studio becomes the space where I observe and you know uh, put all of these responding medium onto them, um, and the space kind of become a a parameter of sort. So the work kind of grow and grow and grow, but then the space kind of like keep it in touch of itself. It becomes its own ecosystems. Uh, it becomes like a membrane of sorts um, that that it, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, like I tend to view the work as like its own ecosystem or its own organism that grow to the capacity of what is surrounded it. Um, so it might break within itself. Like if it grows too big, then it will kind of collapse within itself uh, inside that space. Maybe.
Thank you. Okay, so our next question, is there an area or terrain you would really like to work in that you have yet to go?
An area or what? Sorry,
Terrain.
or terrain. Um, I'm I'm down for anywhere, and I think I would love to go back to the desert. Um,
Ooh,
I think I feel at home in the woods, um, but maybe that's why I want to go back to the desert and kind of um, trying to figure it out there. I think it has a very the desert and the open space there has a very melancholy and very uh, meditative, but at the same time kind
mm,
of intimidating space to be in. And again with the scale, like I work in micro and macro in that aspect, and I tend to like just on the ground, just doing little things. But at the same time, like those little things and accumulation of those things informs the grandiose of the space in itself. Because like it's a cop out or not a cop out, but it's a cliche idea now of fractals. Like everyone's working with fractals, but I believe in that as well. That's the same above, below, and uh, the small and the large are very much have the same commonality. We just have to make that connection.
mm. Awesome. Thank you so much. So if there's any last minute questions from anybody else, please feel free to ask them now. You can even unmute yourself and just ask. I'm fine with that. All right. Well, going once, going twice. It looks like we don't have any additional questions, so this will conclude our program for today. Once again, thank you all for attending this week's Visiting Artist lecture with Dee, and we hope that you guys enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dee. And if you don't mind, could you just hang out for 1 second?